Picture this. You wake up, right, totally groggy.
With a massive headache, I assume?
Oh, absolutely. Pounding headache. And
Yeah.
there's this errant spear of daylight just like piercing right through the drapery into your eyes.
Sounds awful.
Right. But then you look down, and to your absolute horror, your well-worn dirty boots are crushing the delicate suede upholstery of a very expensive lounge couch.
Oh, no. That's a nightmare.
Total panic sets in. You start frantically tossing throw pillows over the scuff marks. You even try to blame the mess on a chubby cat named Fenris.
Just throwing the cat right under the bus.
Exactly. I mean, if you've ever had a job where you're just terrified of getting yelled at by this, elegant, untouchable boss, you know exactly what this feels like.
Oh, for sure. We've all been there.
But here's the catch for you. Your boss isn't just some executive. She's a centuries-old immortal, and you are her super-powered, magically bound conscript.
It's a really disarming way to start a story, honestly.
Right, because usually we expect epic fantasy or, post-apocalyptic sci-fi to open with clashing swords or booming prophecies.
Yeah, or cities turning to ash. But starting with a hangover and dirty upholstery, it instantly pulls you in because it's so fiercely mundane.
Completely, and that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we've put together a tailored reader's guide and quality review for you, focusing heavily on this amazing opening chapter.
Titled Daybreak, right?
Yes, Daybreak from the novel San Vitae, The Awakening by D.P. Kirk. Our mission today is to break down how this opening chapter establishes a massive, complex world.
Without just dumping history on you.
Exactly, not by just giving you a textbook, but by showing you the psychological cage of its main character.
And we're also going to look at the broader context of the book, too. We want to contextualize how this seemingly quiet, intimate opening serves as the structural anchor for the explosive apocalyptic scope of the rest of the story.
Because it really does get explosive later.
Well, completely off the rails. But we'll explore why understanding this first chapter is actually the key to appreciating the entire universe the author builds.
So let's start with this illusion of peace, because Daybreak reads almost like a supernatural workplace comedy at first.
It really does.
You've got Kurien, our protagonist, and he's this lethal bodyguard, a San Vitae, which is basically a being with primal, terrifying power.
Right.
Yet his immediate concern is just hiding boot marks from his boss, his Covenness Myasuchi.
Yeah, and when she walks into her pristine library, she is just the definition of unbothered elegance.
Totally unbothered.
She's sipping a vintage wine, and she's casually balancing her tinted spectacles on the rim of a fluted crystal glass.
That specific visual detail, I mean, it tells you everything about their dynamic without a single line of exposition.
Exactly. Myasuchi glides into the room, and she is just in total control. By using these relatable chores, the pet antics, to ground Kurien's humanity, the author establishes a real baseline of normalcy.
Right.
Kurien is a living weapon, sure, but right now, he's just a guy who slept on the couch and is hoping his boss doesn't notice.
He's grasping at normalcy. And that desperate grasp for civilization is immediately tested by the absolute worst kind of corporate client.
Oh, this guy.
Right. A wealthy businessman, a normal human, or a sans merchant in this world's terminology. He just struts into Myasuchi's office and disrespects her space completely.
Yeah, he throws his heavy black trench coat right over her loose documents, just scattering them everywhere.
And then carelessly props his silver-forged viper's head cane against her cherry wood desk.
Which is just so rude.
It is. If you've ever had to smile through a client berating you, you will relate to Kurien here.
Definitely.
Except, instead of drafting a, passive-aggressive email, Kurien is literally digging his fingernails into the suede lounge. He is physically suppressing the urge to tear the man's throat out.
And this is where we see the political reality of their world, actually. Because the merchant is demanding that the Santerrie, which you can sort of think of as a supernatural United Nations.
Good analogy, yeah.
He's demanding they cover his associates' financial losses. And Myasuchi, she doesn't even flinch.
No, she's ice cold.
She just coldly reminds him of his place, stating that in the city of Rwanthe, she is the Santerrie. And the merchant just throws a tantrum and storms out.
And Myasuchi just swivels her chair, lifts her glass, and gives Kurien a single look.
Just a look.
Right. She just bids him to go deal with it, adding with this incredibly sweet, disturbing sincerity, "Do ensure you convey our deepest regrets."
Such a cold, calculated move.
It really is. But as Kurien steps out onto the cobblestone streets to track this merchant down, the genre of the book seems to shift entirely.
It does. The illusion of the quiet office falls away, and we see the rot beneath the surface of this city.
Yeah, the narrative moves from tense office politics into the grim mechanics of this post-cataclysmic world. Out on the street, Kurien uses his heightened senses, right? And he observes the merchant's aura.
Which is described as a vermilion miasma.
Right, a vermilion miasma. And this is where we need to unpack how the magic or the Vitae system actually functions in this world.
Because Vitae is essentially life force. Right?
Exactly. But the merchant isn't a magical being. He's a sans, just a normal human. Yet Kurien realizes the guy is high on something called corrupted Vitae.
And the way this is produced is deeply, deeply unsettling.
It's horrifying. Tell him about it.
Okay, so in this society, the wealthy human elite have engineered this incredibly oppressive practice. They intentionally addict their own normal sans human servants to traditional heavy pharmaceuticals.
Which is just so dark.
It's pitch black. The drugs corrupt the servant's natural life force, and then the elite extract the corrupted vitae and consume it to get this euphoric, aggressive high.
Wow.
So the only reason that merchant felt bold enough to disrespect an immortal Covenness in her own office was because he was essentially drunk on the stolen, poisoned life force of his own abused staff.
Which gives a totally different context to his arrogance, you know? He's not just a rude client, he's a literal parasite.
Exactly.
Right.
And Kurien is disgusted by it.
Right, so Kurien uses something called a blink step. It's this explosive dash that propels him 100 meters in an instant, and he appears right in the merchant's path on a bridge.
It scares him half to death.
Oh, he violently thrusts the man's viper cane into the cobblestones, shattering it, and he terrifies the merchant so badly the man actually wets himself.
Classic.
Then Kurien just gives him a warning and walks away. But I really have to push back on this sequence.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if Kurien is an apex predator filled with primal rage, right?
Yeah.
And this merchant is a corrupt user who literally farms human beings for drug-laced magic.
Yeah.
Why the restraint? Why does Kurien just scare him and break a cane? Why not just end him right there? The guy clearly deserves it, and Kurien clearly has the power to do it in half a second.
It's a vital question, and the answer is all about geopolitics. It's really what makes Kurien such a tragic figure.
How so?
Well, Kurien wants to kill him. His instincts are screaming at him to do it, but he explicitly notes that killing a wealthy human merchant could sever Rwanthe's delicate relations with the ruling Santerrie Council.
Ah.
And even worse, it could provoke the zealots known as the Humanis La Luna.
Okay, wait, those are the anti-magic extremists, right?
Yes. The Humanis La Luna wield advanced Daybreak technology, which is essentially anti-magic weaponry. And their entire goal is to cleanse the world of beings like Kurien.
So it's a huge risk.
Exactly. Myasuchi signed a treaty called the Daybreak Accord to protect her city from being wiped out by these factions.
Okay, so you can sort of think of the Accord as a nuclear non-proliferation treaty.
That's a perfect way to look at it. Kurien is a living weapon of mass destruction, but he's bound by that treaty. He's forced to exercise incredible restraint in this severe, lawless wasteland because the survival of the entire city of Rwanthe depends on him keeping his temper in check.
Wow, so his restraint isn't a sign of weakness at all. It's the ultimate burden.
He's totally trapped by duty.
He has all this power, but he can't use it to fix the obvious evil right in front of his face.
Exactly. And notice how D.P. Kirk normalizes this extraordinary tension immediately afterward.
Oh, yeah. Kurien walks off the bridge, and he calms his bristling hair by listening to the river.
Just listening to the water.
And then he just casually stops by his favorite vendor, Jushu, to buy some teriyaki beef skewers.
Right. And the vendor catches the coins without even looking up from the grill.
It just shows you that this level of suppressed violence is like just a Tuesday for them.
That juxtaposition is wild.
Yeah.
You go from nearly murdering a man to buying street food.
Yeah. But the author doesn't let us or Kurien relax for long, because that restraint Kurien shows on the street is exactly what makes his interactions with the other immortals so fraught.
Definitely.
When he goes back to the office, we meet Rikuko, Myasuchi's twin sister. And her introduction is where the psychological tool of this world really becomes apparent.
Rikuko is a fascinating, deeply unsettling character.
Very unsettling.
She's an ancient master of Vitae, just as old and powerful as Myasuchi. But instead of adopting an elegant, controlled persona like her sister, Rikuko chooses to physically manipulate her form to look like an innocent schoolgirl.
And not just a schoolgirl, but like a ruined one.
Right.
The author describes her wearing these mismatched academy uniforms that are torn, burnt, and stained with blood.
Oh, and she binds her chest with gauze, too.
And she scrapes the marred metal tips of blood-stained ballet shoes against the stone floor. I mean, why would an ancient, powerful being choose to look like a victim from a horror movie?
It's psychological warfare, really, both against her enemies and against herself.
Interesting. How do you mean?
Well, the intentional imperfections in her guise, the blood, the torn clothes, they viscerally display the chaos of the Vitae magic system.
Right, the rot underneath.
Exactly. While Myasuchi and Kurien try to pretend they are civilized by worrying about suede couches and treaties, Rikuko wears the brutality of their existence on the outside.
And Kurien experiences intense cognitive dissonance looking at her, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. His primal mind can't stop imagining her tearing those clothes off the actual girls she encounters during her unsanctioned feedings.
Oh, so dark.
She is a predator wearing the vulnerable clothes of her victims just to taunt everyone around her.
It really shows the sheer psychological deterioration of living that long with that much power.
And then she drops her playful, creepy act for just a second, right? She grips the staircase banister and warns Myasuchi about nuisances threatening her gatherings.
Yeah, and she slips into this frightfully hollow, disembodied crone voice, suggesting they handle these things together before they awaken something far worse.
That warning introduces the macro threat of the novel, because think about it, what could possibly terrify an ancient chaotic predator like Rikuko?
Exactly, and Myasuchi is visibly shaken by the taunt, which Kurien notes is incredibly uncharacteristic for her.
The narrative is basically telling us that the treaties, the elegant offices, the teriyaki vendors, all of this fragile peace in Roanthe is already cracking in Chapter 1.
And Kurien knows it. So to escape that heavy atmosphere with Rikuko, he steps outside, and we get this heartbreaking contrast.
Yeah, he runs into his childhood friend, Tippin.
Right, and Tippin is a normal, sans human guy. He playfully throws a fist-sized ball of chalk at Kurien's head, yelling, "Hey, furball!"
And Kurien catches it and crushes it.
They joke around, Tippin gossips about people disappearing, and Kurien jokingly pushes Tippin off the bridge into the waist-deep river.
That scene is crucial. Tippin represents the innocent humanity Kurien is desperately trying to protect.
But the scene is laced with melancholy.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because Kurien knows there is a gap of understanding between them that can never be closed. Tippin will just never understand the burden of the Daybreak Accord or the terrifying reality of beings like Rikuko.
He's living in two different worlds but belongs to neither.
Exactly.
He watches a local flower maid nearby nervously shuffling her scented oils, just terrified of his mere presence. And Kurien spirals into this incredibly poetic internal monologue.
It's a beautiful passage.
He realizes he's a relic of a cataclysm in an age that has forgotten its history. He's a protector and an executioner, hated, loved, and feared all at once.
Yeah, he describes his existence as a self-imposed purgatory, saying, "In love with a woman who does not or cannot, for the sake of the people she serves, love me back. I am Kurien, and I am alone."
It's such a profound realization of his isolation, and I think this brings us to evaluating the quality of Daybreak as a structural opening for the rest of the book.
Oh, definitely. Because the contrast between this quiet, character-driven first chapter and the later events of San Vitae, the awakening is immense.
I mean, looking at the notes on the broader context of the book, things go completely off the rails.
They really do. The world doesn't just crack, it shatters.
Yeah, later on, Kurien gets captured by Inquisitors and is thrown into a literal torture vault for 12 years.
12 years.
He's strapped into an iron maiden that drains his pitch-pure vitae. And we find out he isn't just a regular San Vitae, he's a Sanite, which is a uniquely powerful mutation.
Right, the Sanite mutation allows him to absorb Vitae directly from the environment. But it comes with a terrifying cost.
The internal demon, right?
Yes, an internal demon that can completely take over his body, manifesting a swirling shield of blackened blood.
Which makes his restraint in Chapter 1 even more impressive.
Exactly. He wasn't just holding back a bad temper against that merchant, he was holding back an internal apocalypse.
And the external apocalypse is just as huge. I mean, the scope expands from street-level city politics to full-scale sci-fi destruction.
We're talking about massive black spires erupting from the ground, emitting shock waves of green energy.
There are alternate space drives from a ship called the Salvation that literally tear entire cities out of existence.
And even his friend Tippin, the guy throwing chalk balls, he returns much later as a scarred, drug-addicted soldier for a faction called the New Covenant, actively hunting Kurien down.
The world becomes completely unrecognizable. Kurien eventually forms a new, profound bond with an evoker named Sharina in the ruins of the world, just trying to find a new purpose.
Which brings up a critical question for any reader starting this book.
Right, and I have to push back here.
Go for it.
If the core of this novel features universe-bending alternate space drives, 12-year torture time skips, and full-scale apocalyptic wars, why start with a chapter about office politics and getting scolded for dirtying a couch? Is Daybreak essentially a bait and switch by the author?
It might feel like it at first glance, but structurally, it is a brilliant anchor.
How so?
Well, if D.P. Kirk started the novel with cities exploding and 12-year torture sequences, it would just be noise. You'd have no emotional context for the destruction.
That makes sense.
By intimately establishing Kurien's fierce, quiet devotion to Myasuchi, his playful dynamic with Tippin, and the fragile, hard-won peace of Rwanthi, the author makes the later destruction profoundly personal.
So the quiet opening is essentially a baseline. It's giving us a baseline of normal before the author obliterates it. You have to build the house before you burn it down.
Precisely. You're going to be excited to read this book because the explosive action later on only matters because Daybreak makes you care about what Kurien has to lose.
Right.
The 12-year time skip in the torture vault means the first chapter is literally the only glimpse of Kurien's normal life we get.
Wow, yeah.
When you're reading about him in that Iron Maiden, you remember him worrying about suede upholstery, and the contrast is heartbreaking.
And when Tippin shows up later as a broken enemy, it hurts because we remember the instant jokes on the bridge.
Exactly. The apocalyptic stakes are grounded entirely in the intimate character work done in Chapter 1.
To summarize San Vitae, The Awakening is a thrilling, genre-bending ride. It seamlessly blends this gritty, supernatural noir atmosphere with expansive post-apocalyptic sci-fi.
It's fantastic.
It gives us a protagonist who is part lethal apex predator, part tragic romantic, and part long-suffering corporate employee.
It's a story that constantly asks what it means to hold on to your humanity when you're built to be a weapon, and how far you will go to protect the fragile things, like a quiet city street or an elegant library in a broken world.
Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over as you dive into this book. Daybreak establishes Kurien's absolute, unwavering devotion to Myasuchi and his duty as his noble core. It's the thing that keeps him civilized.
Right.
But as the apocalypse unfolds, and as you read deeper into his 12-year torment and his awakening as a Sanite, you have to ask yourself, is this devotion actually his greatest strength? Or is it just the psychological cage that keeps him from discovering his true power?
That is the core thematic question you'll be wrestling with through the entire novel.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the sources. The next time you wake up with a headache and notice scuff marks on your furniture, just be glad your boss isn't an immortal Covenness.
Seriously.
And you aren't the one responsible for holding back the end of the world. Catch you next time.